Good evening. My name is Caitlin Winston. When I got to college, all I wanted was a normal experience. Nothing fancy, no life-changing moments, just normal. And I know that sounds kind of contradictory to what we're told our whole lives about what college is supposed to be. But if I'm being honest, I didn't really buy into the whole all-encompassing college experience. You see, I'd grown up in the same town my entire life, and it was a very small town. And almost all of my extended family also lived in that small town. So I didn't think I'd ever find another community that I felt such a strong connection to. So when I got here for my first semester of my first year, I did just that. I had a very normal experience. I made some great friends. I joined a couple organizations that I really liked, and I enjoyed my classes. But at the same time, I still didn't feel like I was a part of it. There was something missing. I didn't feel that connection to this community yet. That was until the evening of November 13th, 2022, when everything changed, not only for me, but for every student on this campus. That evening started out like most Sunday evenings would go for me last semester. I was at a rehearsal for an organization called First Year Players. If you don't know what First Year Players is, it's a completely student-run organization in which upperclassmen put on shows for first years to perform in, to give them a place to perform and a community to be a part of. It was about 10:30 at night, and we were finally on the finale, almost done, when all of a sudden the upperclassmen announced that there had been an active shooter on grounds, and that they'd be locking all the exterior doors, but just to finish the scene. Now, at this point, I was more confused than I was scared because, if I'm being honest, as a first year in their first semester, I didn't really know where Colbeth Road Garage was. But anyway, as soon as I got off stage, I checked my phone and I got a flood of text messages from worried friends and roommates asking me where I was and if I was okay, as well as one new blaring UVA message that said, "Run, hide, fight." Now, this isn't a text from your school that you ever want to get, but especially not your first time being away from home. I think we were all beginning to realize how serious of a situation this was. Now, we weren't in any immediate danger, but we weren't in the best situation either. We were rehearsing in the Student Activities Building, which, if you don't know, is basically a concrete box with a couple of doors and a couple windows. But the only furniture in it was the furniture we had put in it for our show, and the heating was mediocre at best. I started focusing on myself. I made sure I got on my costume, I had my sneakers on, I had my jacket nearby, and I was charging my phone. But as I was doing this, I started to notice all these efforts going on around me to keep the building secure. Students were barricading the doors, blocking the windows, monitoring the police scanner, and even created an escape plan for the worst case scenario. It was an incredible group effort. I think we all realized that we needed to trust each other with our lives. And even in these terrifying circumstances, these students took action. But what was even more inspiring than seeing all these efforts was the love and the community that I felt. You see, I'd accepted that I needed to give over my trust physically to these students, but I still hadn't opened up emotionally. When something bad happens to me, I'm not exactly the kind of person that the first thing I do is I go and tell someone about it. I don't open up about it. I retreat in. And so I sat there in a corner of the Student Activities Building on the concrete floor against a concrete wall, freezing, hungry, eating whatever I had left of the box of Triscuits that I brought to rehearsal that day, and scared. I was so scared. But these students wouldn't let me sit there and feel alone and scared. They were going to make sure I was okay. I'll never forget how many students came up to me and asked me how I was doing, if there was anything they could do for me. And I'll always thank them for that. It was to the point where it even inspired me to get up and go ask others if they were okay. You could ask anyone that was in that room that night. The love and community we felt for each other was very real. We were in that building for 11 hours, and by the end, we were all very hungry, very cold, and very tired, as our only options for sleeping were either the concrete floor or the metal chairs that we had put together to create an audience. I remember driving back around New Dorms area to get back to my dorm, and I'll never forget how quiet the campus looked and felt, and how empty it felt. It was as if the school was paused in time, with everybody wondering how we were going to find a way forward, myself included. We were given the option to go home. Classes and homework were all optional until the end of Thanksgiving break. And some people did go home, and that's what they needed. But what impressed me so much was how many students stayed. How many students felt such a connection to this community that they felt they needed to be here in the school's most difficult time. I'll never forget how many students showed up to the vigil, not even 24 hours after this traumatizing event happened to them. How many artistic tributes I saw. How the students supported each other both publicly and privately. And I'll never forget looking around JPJ in awe at how many students had stayed a week longer than they had to celebrate the lives of their classmates. I learned a lot about UVA students in both that night and the aftermath. I learned that UVA students are proactive. I learned that UVA students are brave and resilient. But most importantly, I learned that UVA students stand by each other, for better or for worse. We don't have to be best friends with every single person we meet, and we're not going to be. But we all know that deep down, there's a bond that connects all of us. Once you give your trust and your love over to this community, it's going to be taken care of, and it's going to be reciprocated. That's what makes this school so special, this community and these students. It was then, in the most unlikely of circumstances, that I finally realized what it meant for your college to be your home and for your peers to become your family. Thank you.